Costa Mesa 911.
There's a body in my son's apartment.
There's a what?
A body, a dead body.
A dead body?
That there's victim sexual activity. She's dead. There's blood from her head.
There was blood from her head?
Yeah.
On the morning of May 21st, 2010, a horrifying scene was uncovered inside the home of 26-year-old military veteran Sam Herr. It was Sam's own father who stumbled upon the lifeless body of a young woman in the apartment. And what he saw was nothing short of a nightmare. Panic surged through him as he reached for his phone and called 911, desperate for help.
Then I walked into the bedroom, and that's when I saw a body, a large amount of blood. I immediately called 911.
But Sam was gone, vanished without a trace. The question haunted everyone. Who was the young woman lying dead in his apartment? And more importantly, what had really happened to her? Had Sam fled the scene after doing the unthinkable? Or was there something far more disturbing hiding beneath the surface? Welcome back to Dark Case Files, where we expose the most chilling, twisted, and mind-bending true crime cases from around the world. If you're drawn to mysteries that unravel with shocking truths and jaw-dropping twists, then make sure to like and subscribe. We put a lot of effort into bringing you these deep dives, and your support keeps us going. Tucked between the bustling cities of Los Angeles and San Diego, Costa Mesa sits quietly on a coastal bluff with postcard-worthy views of the Pacific Ocean. Known for its beach town charm and upscale calm, it was the last place anyone would expect something sinister. But beneath the sun-soaked calm, a nightmare was about to unfold, one that would leave a community shaken, a family broken, and investigators grasping for answers. Sam Herr, a 26-year-old Army veteran who had served in Afghanistan, had plans to visit his parents that weekend. When he didn't show or respond to calls, concern began to creep in. On May 22, 2010, his father, Steve Herr, and his wife Raquel decided to check in on him. They headed to Sam's apartment, not knowing they were about to step into a horrifying scene.
Sam, what happened? What did you do?
The moment Steve walked through the door, something felt off. The place was quiet. Too quiet. As he moved through the clean, mostly ordinary apartment, he noticed nothing out of place. But the second he entered the bedroom, the facade shattered. There, sprawled partially across the bed and slumped to her knees, was a young woman's lifeless body. Her clothes had been partially torn, blood trickled from her forehead, and her lower body was exposed. Steve's heart raced. He cried out in horror, grabbing his phone and dialing 911 with trembling hands.
Costa Mesa 911.
There's a body in my son's apartment.
There's a what?
A body, a dead body.
A dead body?
That there's victim sexual activity. She's dead. There's blood from her head.
There was blood from her head?
Yeah. Honey, I don't know what to say.
Do you know where your son is?
No, I don't. I don't.
Police rushed to the scene. For a town like Costa Mesa, where homicides are nearly unheard of, this was a shocking discovery. The investigators found no immediate signs of a break-in or violent struggle.
Immediately as you walk in, you could tell it was a bachelor-type apartment. It was a clean apartment. There was no signs that there may have been a struggle or maybe a fight that had gone on.
It was a typical bachelor pad. A grill on the patio, a few empty beer bottles, the usual clutter, but nothing unusual, until they stepped into that room.
Then the bedroom, which begins to look a little suspicious. On the bedside table, there's an unused knife, and there's a couple of books. One of them, a combat how-to. Another, the wonders of sex. But then when you turn to the bed, a horrendous sight.
The bedroom was soaked in blood. But it was what lay on the bed that was truly disturbing. The woman, young and seemingly dressed for an outing, was wearing a sparkling tiara. Scribbled on the back of her sweater, in crude, deliberate letters, were the words, "All yours." Her bag was found abandoned in the kitchen. From her ID, police learned her name, Julie Kibuishi, a 23-year-old college student and dancer, a rising talent, a beloved sister and daughter. She had been shot twice in the head.
She had one gunshot wound, kind of top center of the head.
One bullet had entered the very top of her skull, suggesting she may have been kneeling or bowing when the trigger was pulled. And yet, the man who lived in the apartment, Sam Herr, was nowhere to be found. Was this the work of a killer who fled the scene in panic? Or was something far more complex going on behind closed doors? one thing was certain. This crime was only the beginning. Julie Kibuishi came into the world on a day meant for love, Valentine's Day, 1987. Born to Japanese-American parents Jun and Masa Kibuishi, she was their third child and their very first daughter. From the start, she was affectionately called My Valentine Girl, a nickname that stuck throughout her life. Julie wasn't just another bright student. She was a vibrant spirit who lit up every room she entered. From a young age, she was drawn to the arts. Her mom remembered how, at just 5 years old, Julie began tap dancing, and once she started, she never stopped. Friends and family described her as warm, bubbly, even goofy in the best way. She had a unique ability to lift the energy in any space, often going out of her way to help others, no matter what. Julie had deep roots in her Japanese heritage, but lived a life with the free spirit of an all-American girl. After finishing high school at the Orange County School of the Arts, she enrolled at Orange Coast College to study fashion design. That's where she met Sam Herr, an Army veteran nearly 3 years older than her, and the two quickly became friends. Julie tutored Sam in anthropology and often helped him with schoolwork. She had no idea that her kindness would be the very thing that led her into danger. After combing through the chaotic and gruesome crime scene, detectives began to put the pieces together. All the clues were pointing in one clear direction: Sam Herr. Julie's body was found inside his bedroom. He was nowhere in sight. It looked like a textbook case. A man kills a woman, flees the scene, and vanishes without a trace. It was time to dig into who Sam Herr really was. Born on May 29, 1983 in Los Angeles, Sam was the only child of Steve and Raquel Herr, his father, a dedicated special education teacher, his mother, a loving homemaker. Raised in a nurturing home, Sam was exceptionally close to his parents. Even after moving out, he visited them frequently. Despite his muscular build and military background, friends called him a gentle giant. He was fun-loving, easygoing, and fiercely loyal. But like many young men who went to war, Sam carried invisible scars. At an early age, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and served overseas with the elite 173rd Airborne Brigade, completing missions in both Afghanistan and Germany. When his service ended after 3 long years, he returned home and used the GI Bill to go back to college, hoping to eventually return to the Army, but this time as an officer. That dream led him to Orange Coast College, where he met Julie. But something had changed inside Sam. The war had left a mark. Friends said he was different after coming back, quieter, sometimes distant. He was diagnosed with PTSD, though many didn't know how deeply it affected him. Now, with Julie dead in his apartment and no sign of Sam anywhere, a dark question began to rise. Had the trauma finally broken him? Had he snapped in a moment of uncontrolled rage? Police soon uncovered a chilling detail: text messages found on Julie's phone. At first, they seemed harmless. At 2:45 p.m. on May 21, 2010, Sam sent her a message saying he was heading to help a friend before going to his parents' place. But then, just 2 hours later, the tone changed completely. New texts came in, desperate, urgent, unsettling. He sounded panicked, distraught, as if something was seriously wrong. He begged her to come over. Julie, being the kind of friend who never turned her back on someone in need, responded like she always did, with compassion. She replied that she would come, promising she'd be there for him, like family. That decision would be her last. To investigators, these texts weren't a cry for help. They looked like bait, a trap carefully laid out to lure Julie into the apartment. Combined with the fact that Sam's car and his passport were missing, police felt confident in their theory. Sam Herr had brutally murdered Julie Kibuishi and then vanished. But what no one realized, not the police, not the Herr family, not even the Kibuishis, was that they were chasing the wrong story. Because the truth would flip this entire case upside down. And it's only just beginning. Just when detectives thought they had Sam Herr figured out, a disturbing revelation from his past cracked the case wide open. It turned out, this wasn't the first time Sam's name had been linked to a violent death. Investigators dug deeper and uncovered something chilling: a murder charge from 8 years earlier. Back in 2002, when Sam was only 18, he had been arrested in connection with a brutal slaying. The victim was 19-year-old Byron Benito, a young man from Canyon Country who had known Sam since they were kids. According to authorities, on the night of January 15th, Sam allegedly picked up Byron from his home and lured him to a remote area behind a mobile home park. There, Byron was ambushed by a violent group, a mob of nearly 18 men and women, many suspected of gang affiliations. Byron was savagely beaten and stabbed to death. Sam was arrested and charged with murder. Prosecutors believed he had helped orchestrate the attack, possibly even setting his childhood friend up for a violent execution. But despite the gravity of the accusations, Sam was ultimately acquitted. The jury found him not guilty. While that cleared him in the eyes of the law, it didn't erase the doubt from the minds of detectives now investigating Julie's death. Even though Sam's family still refused to believe he was capable of murder, the police were growing more certain they had the right man. He had military training, was proficient with firearms, and now had a disturbing link to a past killing. To them, Sam Herr was armed, dangerous, and running from justice. The Costa Mesa police wasted no time. They issued a statewide APB, an all-points bulletin, to every law enforcement agency across California.
His passport was missing. His car was missing. I'm looking at everything going, come on guys, this is obvious. You know, you're gonna find Sam, he's gonna be our killer.
Sam Herr wasn't just a person of interest anymore. He was now a fugitive, a possible double murderer, and the clock was ticking. Investigators began monitoring his every financial move. They tracked activity on his credit cards and cell phone, hoping to catch him slipping up. It wasn't long before they noticed something suspicious: 4 separate ATM withdrawals made shortly after Julie's disappearance. Not only that, but his credit card had been used to order pizza in Long Beach, just 20 miles from where he lived. That was the break they were waiting for. Police rushed to secure footage from the ATM security cameras, expecting to finally see their suspect's face. Maybe disheveled, maybe panicked, maybe just cold and calculating. But when the images came through from the bank surveillance systems, no one could believe what they were looking at. It wasn't Sam. It was a teenager, his face partly hidden by a cap and a hoodie, casually withdrawing cash from Sam's account like it was his own. Not a single officer recognized the kid. Neither did Sam's parents. Theories started swirling immediately. Was this teenager helping Sam escape? Was he a pawn in a bigger plan? Was he the one moving through the world while Sam stayed underground? At this point, investigators had more questions than answers. But one thing was crystal clear. They had to find the mystery teen. On May 26, 2010, investigators received another alert. Sam Herr's credit card had just been used again, this time for yet another pizza delivery. Determined to catch him, detectives wasted no time. They quickly tracked down the delivery driver and obtained the address where the food had been sent. With guns drawn and adrenaline surging, police rushed to the scene, ready to storm the place and apprehend their suspected killer. But when they burst through the doors, Sam wasn't there. Instead, they found 17-year-old Wesley Freilich, a teenager hanging out with a group of friends. He looked more like a high school kid cramming for finals than someone hiding a fugitive. Although Wesley had been spotted earlier on ATM surveillance footage, investigators quickly ruled him out as a suspect in Julie's murder. But he still had Sam's credit card, and now they needed to know how he got it. Wesley's story was nothing short of shocking. He hadn't stolen the card. He hadn't found it. He hadn't even heard of Sam Herr. According to Wesley, he'd been given the credit card and specific instructions on how to use it by someone else entirely, a man named Daniel Wozniak. Wozniak had told Wesley that he was a bail bondsman and that Sam Herr owed him money. He said he needed help pulling out the funds, and Wesley, young and impressionable, trusted him. He admired Daniel, who was a charismatic local actor and someone Wesley had met through community theater. He looked up to him like an older brother. Without realizing the dangerous game he was being pulled into, Wesley agreed to help. Altogether, Wesley had withdrawn $1,900 from various ATMs. When investigators heard the name Daniel Wozniak, it immediately rang a bell. During the initial search of Sam Herr's apartment, they had found an invitation to Wozniak's upcoming wedding. At the time, it seemed like an insignificant detail. Now, it looked like a thread that might unravel the entire case. But who was Daniel Wozniak, really? Was he helping Sam run from the law? Or had he been involved from the start? The questions were piling up fast, and the answers were about to lead investigators somewhere they never expected. Daniel Dan Patrick Wozniak was born on March 23, 1984, the youngest of 3 sons. While his parents worked long hours, Dan spent most afternoons at his grandparents' house. He grew up in a well-off family, living in a comfortable home, surrounded by financial security. The Wozniaks enjoyed lavish vacations and a stable lifestyle. On the surface, it looked like a picture-perfect upbringing. Dan did well in school and was generally considered a good kid. He wasn't a troublemaker. In fact, he got good grades and was known for his outgoing, fun-loving personality. But Dan craved something more: attention. He used humor, magic tricks, singing, and dancing to make people laugh. From a young age, he loved being in the spotlight. As he got older, that love for attention grew into a passion for theater. Dan threw himself into acting and musical performances, always eager to be on stage. But off stage, life wasn't so glamorous. Dan couldn't seem to hold a job. He bounced from one low-paying gig to another, unable to find stability. Despite the instability, he never gave up his dreams of acting, and it was through theater that Dan met the woman he believed was his soulmate, a fellow actor who shared his love for the stage. Their romance was fast and passionate. After a short period of dating, they made a big decision. They were getting married. Their wedding date was set on May 26, 2010. Police finally tracked Daniel Wozniak down, not hiding, not fleeing, but celebrating his bachelor party in Huntington Beach, California. While the rest of the group partied, investigators closed in on the man they now considered a central figure in the murder mystery. But the pressing question still loomed: how exactly was Wozniak connected to Sam Herr? As it turned out, the link was closer than anyone imagined. Daniel Wozniak lived in the same apartment complex as Sam. That proximity alone set off alarms. Detectives began to suspect he had either aided Sam in escaping or played a much darker role in the crime itself. Without waiting another second, police stormed Wozniak's party. They walked straight past the balloons, drinks, and laughter, right up to the groom-to-be, and served him with an arrest warrant. The moment Daniel saw the officers, the color drained from his face. It was the reaction of a man who knew exactly why they were there, and it told investigators everything they needed to know. This wasn't just about credit cards anymore. This man knew more than he was letting on. He was taken into custody and escorted to the interrogation room. From the beginning, Daniel tried to keep his story simple. He admitted to a minor offense, credit card fraud, and nothing more. He claimed Sam had asked for his help withdrawing cash from his account, using Wesley as the middleman. The plan, according to Daniel, was to empty the account and later pretend the card had been stolen. A quick scam. Nothing violent, no harm done. But then Daniel added a disturbing twist. He claimed that shortly before they carried out their plan, Sam made a shocking confession. Though Daniel wouldn't elaborate at first, he said the confession was so serious that he immediately drove Sam to a local shopping center, dropped him off, and never saw him again. It was a strange story, too convenient, too clean. Investigators didn't buy it. They were convinced Daniel was hiding something, perhaps even protecting Sam, or worse, playing a direct role in the events that ended Julie's life. So, the detectives shifted tactics. They wanted to shake him. Without warning, they took a DNA swab. And it worked. Daniel Wozniak, who had seemed calm moments earlier, was suddenly rattled. He tried to collect himself, but the nervous energy in the room spiked. He shifted in his seat, his voice wavered, and his gaze dropped to the floor. The mask was slipping. Detectives leaned in. The pressure was on. Sensing a crack in his resolve, they pressed forward.
Tell me about the Sam incident and what you did.
I told him that I needed to move some stuff from the theater. I said, you need to bend down and help me lift this thing up. And when he bent down, I grabbed the gun. I never really fired the gun before, so I pulled it back and I shot him.
Detectives noticed something off. Daniel Wozniak was clearly anxious about the possibility that his DNA might surface in Sam's apartment. Though he insisted otherwise, the pressure was eating at him. His story kept shifting, falling apart little by little. After an uneasy silence, Wozniak finally admitted he knew Julie had been murdered and claimed he'd only helped the killer escape. But when officers reminded him they had DNA evidence, Wozniak stayed confident, insisting it wouldn't match anything on Julie's body. He clung tightly to the idea that he wasn't directly involved. Detectives were hoping he'd finally lay everything out, but just as they were getting close, Wozniak abruptly shut down the interview. Still, with so many unanswered questions, they couldn't just let him walk away. They warned him that unless he gave a full account, he'd be charged as an accessory to murder. For Wozniak, the stakes were personal. He was supposed to get married in just 2 days. The stress began to break him. His version of events shifted once again. Detectives sensed they were close and made a bold move. They told him, falsely, that his DNA had been found on Julie's body. The truth? Those test results were still weeks away. What happened next stunned them. Wozniak didn't even argue. Instead, he offered an explanation. His DNA was there because he'd stood directly over Julie's body. That single admission cracked everything wide open. Wozniak, once a performer on stage, couldn't keep the act going under fluorescent lights and recorded questions. As the lies unraveled, he said something else, something investigators couldn't ignore. He mentioned a detail about Julie's injuries no one outside the medical examiner's office should have known. While the crime scene showed one gunshot wound, the autopsy revealed a second. That meant Wozniak had witnessed the murder, or worse, taken part in it. And now, detectives had enough to hold him. But despite Wozniak sitting in custody, the most urgent piece of the puzzle was still missing: Sam Herr. And Wozniak wasn't talking. Desperate for a new lead, detectives searched for anything that might bring them closer to Sam. Meanwhile, Wozniak placed a call from jail to his fiancé, Rachel Buffett. Whether he understood those calls were recorded or not didn't matter, because Rachel was about to make a choice that would change everything. She wasn't going to cover for him. She told Wozniak she planned to contact the police and share what she knew. Suddenly, Wozniak was no longer silent. In a panic, he rushed to speak with detectives, hoping to cut a deal, the same deal he'd flat out refused just hours earlier. But what he confessed next wasn't what anyone was expecting. For the first time, Wozniak seemed ready to open the door to the full, horrific truth. It began with what seemed like a harmless request between friends. On May 21st, 2010, Daniel Wozniak asked his close friend Sam Herr for a small favor: to help move a few boxes stored in the attic of the Los Alamitos Theater, located on a nearby military base. Trusting him completely, Sam agreed. As he bent down, focused on the task, unaware of any threat behind him, Wozniak quietly drew a gun and fired a single shot to the back of Sam's head. Sam never saw it coming. Remarkably, he didn't die right away. Bleeding and stunned, he pleaded with Wozniak for help. But instead of mercy, Wozniak reloaded his weapon and fired again, this time ending Sam's life without a hint of hesitation. Even with his friend dead at his feet, Wozniak's twisted plan had only just begun. Calmly and deliberately, he picked up Sam's phone and messaged Julie Kibuishi, posing as Sam. He convinced her to come over to Sam's apartment that night. Meanwhile, Sam's body remained hidden in the attic. Without missing a beat, Wozniak returned to the theater where he was performing in a play. He laughed, danced, sang, putting on a flawless performance while concealing the horror of what he'd just done and what he was about to do. Later that same evening, Wozniak slipped into Sam's apartment. When Julie arrived, unsuspecting and concerned, he greeted her with 2 bullets to the head. Once again, his actions were methodical. He staged the scene to make it appear as though Sam had attacked Julie, then fled the apartment. But Wozniak wasn't done, not even close. To keep Sam from ever being identified, he returned to the attic. There, in an act almost too gruesome to comprehend, he mutilated Sam's body, removing his head and hands to destroy any chance of recognition. He disposed of the remains in a nearby park, and yet, through it all, Wozniak acted as though nothing had happened. He returned to the cast party after the show, where detectives would later find photos of him laughing, posing, and enjoying himself. But the deeper motive behind his crimes proved to be just as disturbing as the killings themselves. At its core, this horrific chain of events was driven by one thing: money.
The motive behind killing Sam was
money and insanity.
Money and insanity. Okay.
Daniel Wozniak was desperate. He was months behind on rent, about to be evicted, jobless, and broke, with a lavish wedding and tropical honeymoon fast approaching. That's when he found out Sam had saved $62,000 from his time in the military. In Wozniak's mind, murdering two people was a fair price to pay for a dream wedding and vacation. But his greed didn't stop at the murders. Detectives uncovered even more damning evidence after Wozniak's fiancé, Rachel Buffett, mentioned a certain backpack during a recorded call from jail. That bag, meant to be destroyed by Wozniak's brother Tim, never made it to a landfill. Instead, Tim tossed it over their parents' fence, and inside, investigators found everything they needed. The backpack held Sam Herr's financial records, passport, blood-stained clothing, and the gun used in both murders. It was all covered in Daniel Wozniak's DNA, a silent witness to the truth he could no longer hide.
It was a cornucopia of evidence. I mean, DNA, expended shell casings, the victim's financial information. It's everything a prosecutor could ever want. And of course, that also led us to the murder weapon itself.
On December 16, 2015, after a swift 5-day trial, the jury returned a verdict. Daniel Wozniak was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder. Less than a month later, on January 11, 2016, the same jury took just 1 hour to decide his fate. It was one of the shortest deliberations in a death penalty case, and it ended with a recommendation that Wozniak be sentenced to death, a sentence many believed he had earned without question. That sentence became official on September 23, 2016, when the judge delivered the final ruling. Daniel Wozniak would be sent to death row. But the trail of lies and betrayal in this case didn't end with him. Investigators would later uncover that his ex-fiancée, Rachel Buffett, may have played a deeper role than she ever admitted. Despite denying involvement, she was accused of misleading detectives on multiple occasions. In 2012, she was charged with 3 felony counts of accessory after the fact for repeatedly lying to police during the investigation. The case against her finally reached its conclusion on September 12, 2018. Rachel was convicted on 2 of the 3 charges, facing up to 44 months behind bars. A few weeks later, on November 8th, she was sentenced to 32 months in jail. She served her time and was released in 2019. 2 vibrant, promising lives were wiped out, and the families left behind had their worlds shattered. All so one man could chase a fantasy of a perfect wedding and a luxurious vacation. There's no way to measure the depth of the loss or the heartbreak left in the wake of his actions. The only small sense of closure lies in knowing that Daniel Wozniak now spends his final days behind bars, unable to hurt anyone else ever again. This wasn't just a crime, it was a tragedy layered in manipulation, deceit, and a complete disregard for human life. Daniel Wozniak didn't just take lives, he shattered families, silenced dreams, and forever scarred those who loved Julie and Sam. Justice may have come eventually, but no verdict can fill the void left behind. Their names deserve to be remembered. Their stories must never be forgotten, and that's why we tell them. If this case gripped you, disturbed you, or made you feel something, subscribe to Dark Case Files. This is where we give voice to the voiceless and light to the darkest corners of true crime. Every week, we uncover the hidden truths behind real crimes, because behind every headline is a human story that deserves to be told with care, compassion, and clarity. Click that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us as we continue digging into the stories that matter, the ones that haunt us, the ones that change us. Thank you for watching, stay aware, stay human, and as always, we'll see you in the next case.